Okay, good morning, everybody. My name is Robert Long, and I'm here from Kyushu Institute of Technology here in Japan. I'm going to be talking to you about the usefulness of online grammar checkers. This is part of a larger 3-year study on writing and over an academic year to see if students actually improve in their writing. Moral of the story is they do not. And that's rather unfortunate. But one of the research aims was to compare the usefulness of online grammar checkers with that of self-editing. So as you know, many universities in Japan have been moving to standardized test course, but also realizing that productive skills are much more of a reflection of proficiency than just simply looking at listening or grammar or reading. And so therefore, the students have to, in these tests, either produce a 1-page or 2-page report, or they have to do writing, and they have to have near native-like compositions. And so therefore, editing and proofing is becoming much more crucial than before. So, however, many EFL learners are very challenged in editing and proofing skills. One of the reasons is that in high school and universities, they don't teach editing. And also with more complex issues, there's issues relating to tone, style, mechanics, phrasing, overall formatting. And there's just the issues of lexical and syntactical complexity, technical English, poetry can even be difficult for native speakers. So for this study, I focused on the frequency of changes made by students from the first draft to the final draft. What kind of errors were identified and missed? 2 experimental groups were formed, one using online grammar checkers and those who were self-editing. Syntactical complexity and grammatical accuracy were examined. So thus, for one aim is to see if the users, let me move my, there we go. If the users of the online grammar checkers accept or ignore the suggestions provided by the software, particularly in regard to more complex issues of syntax and style. The study is based on 199 papers that were collected over the academic year of 2019 to 2020 from 4 universities in Kyushu. Of these papers, 99 were proofed by an online grammar checker. As you know, let's talk about the review of literature very quickly. As you know, most grammar checkers have been around since the 1980s. There's been a lot of criticism, of course, of their effectiveness. But over the past 10 years, they've become a bit more efficient. And academic writing, as you know, has improved and provided a lot of challenges. So EFL learners are having a very steep learning curve in how to really cope. So even in interpreting and applying the information from grammar checkers can lead to a great deal of problems because sometimes the advice isn't quite correct. So Michail, in 2009, observes that many of our decisions in speaking may or may not be grammatically appropriate or correct. Thus, many EFL learners then become dependent on shorter sentences to make sure that it's syntactically and grammatically correct and avoid complex issues or complex phrasing. So one of the issues, of course, is feedback. And as you know, teachers in medium-sized or larger-sized classrooms find it almost impossible to give feedback on each student's papers. You can imagine students with 30, teachers with 30 students, you have a few classes like this. It takes an enormous amount of time just to go through one paragraph. So Ferris and Roberts found in their 2001 study that there were similar significant positive results for students who had received feedback. Furthermore, grammar translation became much more respectable as it is allowed for by more accurate proofing of students' technical English. So basically, results show that similar significant positive effects for those groups who had received feedback. Moreover, grammar translation has improved with the websites offering grammar checkers, allowing individuals to proof their scientific work. So for each grammar checker, there are advantages and disadvantages. So for the grammar checker Grammarly, it tries to have students to not use a passive voice, whereas Ginger tries to have students try to write more sophisticated sentences. And this could be confusing for writers who may not have the proficiency to do that, and maybe also provide distracting. So there have been many some improvements over the years, and there's been more feedback on style and tone, also identifying wordy and awkward phrasing. The user is also able to identify the audience and level of writing. So, okay, so furthermore, explanations on identified errors have improved along with the software providing much more varied feedback. In addition, helpful statistics about one's time and fluency number of words can be now added to weekly reports. So, thus, as schools and standardized tests are now requiring written output, more university and high school teachers need more to provide more feedback to the students so they can actually improve. Without the feedback, there's just going to be no improvement. So grammar checkers have a mixed record, but more investigation is needed into the kinds of errors that Japanese students tend to ignore and those that they do attempt to correct. So the research questions are as follows. How did complexity and accuracy change over the academic year? Were there any significant changes between the first and second drafts? What kind of errors were identified and corrected by both methods? What kinds of errors were identified? What kinds of errors were missed by both methods of editing? How can syntactical complexity of the essays before and after editing be described? Were the changes significant? And is there a significant difference in grammatical accuracy, frequency of errors between those who self-edit and those who use online grammar checkers? So data. So this data is based on, as I said, on my grant's first year data collection from 4 universities comprising of 99 papers, 199 papers. So the one set was collected in April 2019, another 2019. For the second and third research questions, 65 essays were collected in June, and these were analyzed. 65 participants age 18 to 20 were largely Japanese, with only 2 foreign students from Southeast Asian countries. So the results show that for the concerning factors and changes of CAF over the year, very little change is noticed on these 3 factors, but some increase is noted in complexity and fluency by papers 4 and 5. Here's the data. So here we go. So for now, what I did here is that I collected 5 papers and had students try to do as best as they can and writing. So we had 5 different themes. And as you can see, the accuracy relatively did not improve very, very little. Complexity, a little bit more, and then fluency, number of words written in the 30 minutes. They had 30 minutes to write these papers. Also improved slightly. So as you can see, there wasn't so much to be happy about. And here is then figure 1, the visual representation of these results. So as for the second research question, of any significant change between the first and edited drafts, you can see there was little change. So students were really not making a whole lot of changes. This is another issue where teachers need to spend much more time in teaching students how to really edit, to add in more sentences, to combine sentences, to delete sentences. And so as you can see, this has been a big problem. And also for my second year of research, this has come up with my study in Hiroshima University. So something that teachers, I think, should all look at. As for the second research question, so in examining the 2 drafts of the 5 papers collected over the year, very little change was noted. So here's a visual representation of the second research question. So going back to that again, as you can see, first draft and second draft. And again, as you can see, just not been so much change, very minimal change. So, okay, so let's go on to the third and fourth question concerning error identification and correction. It is found, as you can see on the next slides, that the students were able to mostly correct spelling mistakes, some article omissions, and some phrasing issues. However, these three types of errors proved to be the most troublesome as well as dealing with plurals and verb usage. Let's take a look at this. So as you can see, spelling, article omissions, subject-verb agreement, phrasing, all of these tended to be the ones that were corrected by both methods. However, those that were missed by both methods were, again, spelling, verb usage, and phrasing. So phrasing is the most problematic issue that you can imagine when we get into prepositional phrases or you name it, any kind of word. Once we get into dependent clauses, students sometimes just broke down. Prepositions also tend to be extremely problematic. In Japanese, we have the same issue with Joshi. Which one do we use? And so this almost becomes an issue. The one thing that did surprise me was the use of capital letters. So I thought students would be able to see this, and the online grammar checkers didn't see this and didn't flag it very often. Commas and marks of punctuation was another issue that students really needed to look at. So it is clear that as you can see that spelling was the most corrected form, and articles, omissions, teachers really needed to work with that, as well as plurals. So issues like phrasing can be problematic. And so teachers, again, need to really pay attention to this. And insofar as the fifth fifth research question, as to whether or not syntactical complexities of the essays change before and after editing, results show that the most significant change was found on the variables of mean length 7.5 and 4.70 respectively. So, and here is a visual representation of the syntactical complexity between the drafts. So as you can see, clauses, maybe students were added a few more sentences here at the end, but almost no change on the mean length runs, how many syllables or T units in a sentence. So students were still keeping and not combining sentences. And so that's another issue that teachers should look at. As for the very last question, no significance was found in grammatical accuracy between those who self-edited and those who used online grammar checkers. Table 7, let's take a look at that now. So here's a descriptive data for the two methods regarding editing. So paper 1, paper 2, 3, 4, 5, self-editing, and on use of online grammar checkers. So as you can see, not so much difference there. So, okay, so discussion. These results showed that no significant difference between the two types of editing, though participants using online grammar checkers did have better results, while errors that were corrected by methods included spelling and phrasing, and article omissions were missed by a large margin. So as we can see, we got to help students to really focus on these kind of errors. Of course, from my experience in teaching ESL students in the United States, each region had, the students from each different region had different types of errors and problems that they had to grapple with. So it's important to know the kinds of errors that your students are actually having problems with and to target those repeatedly. In any case, we need to look for some issues regarding syntactical complexity. And oops, let me go back to that. And we found that this did not change. And so teachers really need to spend a little bit more time and looking at sentence patterns and to coach students to write longer and more complex and varied sentences. So furthermore, students need much more exposure to grammatical arrangement of words. So attention needs to be paid attention to adverbial and adjectival modifiers, verb phrasing and gerunds, the stuff that makes writing come alive. So, and also I found students really didn't use that many adjectives, and adverbs were very, very scarce. It's almost 0.5% of all the words that were used. So a lot more can be done with improving the lexical complexity of our students. In short, this paper has presented data that indicates that online tools can be effective and useful in identifying grammatical errors, but teachers need to work extensively and consistently with EFL students on the editorial and proofing processes. Much more work is needed. And I'd like to thank the Kitakyushu Science Grant Foundation for their support for this grant, and also my statistician. Thank you very much. Goodbye. Have a good day, and let me know if you have any questions. Bye-bye.